This one time in Sicily, my family decided that it was the right time to hike up an active volcano. Mount Etna has been dormant for years. It's not like we'd be running from flowing lava, right? So, we headed out early in the morning with our kindly guide, Franco. As we drove toward the mountain, we stopped off for a quick bite in a tiny village. This being Sicily and it being 8 a.m., naturally we went for some ice cream. Franco spoke emphatically of the tradition of scooping glorious mounds of gelato onto buttery soft brioche bread to kick off the day with gusto. Oh, and an espresso per the rules. Now satisfied from the most important dessert of the day, we set off to willingly walk toward a hill swelling with molten death. Then, as if Etna heard my thoughts, about halfway up to the third largest crater, we witnessed the second largest crater explode. Boom! Poof! Smoke shooting 200 feet into the air. Just a little burp, says Franco. No cracked earth, no lava. Yet, he says. We took this moment with surprising stride, photographed the plume as a family, as selfies, maybe even as a record for later discovery by the authorities. As we took the faster, steeper way down the hill, gliding ever so gently downward into admittedly fun piles of ash. And though the actual threat was light, I could not help but think, at least I had ice cream for breakfast. My name is Howie Southworth. I travel, I eat, I cook, and then I write fancy words about all of it. My cookbooks are loaded with wild stories and fabulous bites, and I've shared plenty of my own adventures. But now, I want to hear somebody else's for a change. Sauced in Translation is a timely podcast spanning the globe of food, spinning tales of lavish meals and epic gastronomic failure. Join us for some well-deserved armchair globetrotting. Let's get saucy. My guest today is Chef Martin Yan. The name is certainly a household one among people of my generation and that of my folks. Yan Can Cook began to grace our 4x3 televisions in the 1980s, and we learned that if Yan can cook, so can we. He was my first culinary hero, and his entertaining flair with a cleaver was an inspiration. His Chinese Cooking For Dummies was the first cookbook that I owned, and his message to the larger world that Chinese cuisine was accessible undoubtedly led to my first thoughts on moving to China. He has authored dozens of cookbooks, won numerous awards ranging from an Emmy to a James Beard, and is still a highly regarded master chef known the world around. More important than any of that, Martin is just a fun guy with whom I've personally been familiar for 13 years. Here's our chat. So it's 2008, and I'm in Beijing working on a documentary about Chinese food. And I'm meeting with the director of the Beijing Chefs Association. At the end of this meeting, he tells me, this evening I'm having dinner with another American. Maybe you know him because, all Americans know each other, right? He says it's a chef from America named Martin Yan. Of course, I said. Yeah, I know him. Tell him I said hi. So later on that evening, I go to dinner, and I'm out at dinner for hours and hours with some friends. And it's about 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning, and I roll back into the hotel. There's a message on my hotel voicemail. I stood with my jaw on the floor for a good 20 minutes. That is Martin Yan to me, the guy who will call a perfect stranger who is making an otherwise undetectable joke. Chef, how often do you get back to China?
I have actually spent a lot more time all over Asia than in China. In the first part of my career, I spent a lot of time traveling in different parts of China. Before they built the high-speed train, they have all the high rises. I'm already there introducing the food, the heritage, the culture, and the history, and how people live, how people eat. Because the old day when I was growing up, it's nothing much. Everything is ration. So I just kind of keep back and go back and see the progress. But in the last 15, 20 years, I spent a lot more time all over Asia.
Yes, you did a lot of work in Vietnam and the larger parts of Southeast Asia, right?
We spent a lot of time in Philippines, Indonesia, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan, all over, including Thailand. And in fact, the only one that I plan to go is Myanmar. I haven't get to that point yet. And since the pandemic, most of our existing project activity kind of got canceled or delayed in the US and China, all over Asia. And since March last year, we decided to change course and start doing something different, just like what you're doing, virtual. We end up having a better meal left over from my virtual cooking class every day. So we actually eat better and a more balanced diet because I've been promoting healthy, fun, simple meal, simple cooking. So I'm actually eating more and I eat a lot and I lost weight. Isn't that amazing?
I think that most of us can't relate to that because most of us are a couple of pounds heavier now. How is it that you've changed the way that you eat in the last 12 months?
Well, in the past, you know that we're normally running around just like you and me. You know, we're always busy. We don't really actually have time to sit down and have a decent meal, a regular meal. We're running from one spot to another. When you film, when you're on the road, it's always running around. Or when people entertain you, they entertain you with a 12-course, 14-course banquet. But at home, basically, I'm promoting healthy eating, healthy cooking. I can't really eat elaborate meal. So I actually cook with the season, cook with the freshest, and teach people, hey, home cooked meal during the pandemic, you can have a wonderful time working in the kitchen. A lot of people never touch a wok, touch a knife, and touch a frying pan, or even put something in the oven. Now, men and women, they start cooking. So it's a lot of fun to share my passion, your and our passion with them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Since everybody's been home, certainly people are learning to cook a little bit more, which is healthier for both you and me and our progress and what the message is that we're trying to get out there. So given that you've been home for as long as we all have, can you remember the last time you traveled and what you ate?
Wow, this is interesting. My last great trip was actually doing filming in Chengdu, China. You know, Chengdu is... it started out about 30, 40 years ago with about a couple million people. Now there's 17 million people. It is the root where Sichuan cuisine kind of started. Many of the ingredients, like the Sichuan peppercorn and the doubanjiang, and then the Sichuan style fermented bean sauce, and also the Sichuan pickle, and a lot of wonderful food, mapo tofu, and all of those. We had an average about 6 courses every day, lunch and dinner, because the restaurant, even home cooks, try to impress us. So every time we go and film something, they would prepare everything they have. For instance, some of the local freshwater fish that is so precious because it's very, very rarely you can catch really good quality freshwater fish. And the bone, it is soft. It is like gelatinous. And then you can eat the whole thing. And then they sauteed it and put a tiny bit of pickle and put a tiny bit of Sichuan peppercorn. Unbelievable. And they're extremely, extremely sweet. And then you can cook the whole fish. You don't even have to cut it open. You just cook the whole thing. It's very, very rare to find it. Even in a regular fish market, you wouldn't be able to do it. It's the local people living up in the hill in a mountain, and then they catch it and they do it themselves, and then they serve it to us.
Is this a river fish or a lake fish?
River fish, in the stream, in the river. And they swim because they swim. So they have very interesting texture. There's a bite to it. Lake fish and the farm fish, they never have that kind of texture. They're not firm.
Interesting. Well, I wonder if you've ever been to this place outside of Chengdu. One of the finest experiences I've ever had was in Pixian County, which, as you know, was where doubanjiang or broad bean paste is originally from. So there's a rather fancy farm restaurant. They have this special 15-course meal where they serve you 15 different dishes using doubanjiang sauce in 15 different ways. And you would think it all tastes the same, but no, 15 completely different flavors.
There's a very common expression in Sichuan cuisine. 100 dishes with 100 flavor profile. Even though you use doubanjiang, the fermented Sichuan bean sauce, as a basic seasoning, just like soy sauce, but with the combination, with the variety of spices and herbs that you put it in, and you create multitude of flavor. When you add something else, a different element into it, then you have a totally different flavor profile. So 100 dish with 100 flavor, 100 taste.
You know, I recently made the mistake of binging a lot of your older television shows. It wasn't a mistake because it was you. It was a mistake because it just made me miss everything about eating in China so much. Particularly the episodes that were surrounding Chengdu. Just made me hungry to go back.
You know what? I'm quite sure you notice that when you travel around different part of Sichuan, and one of the most popular one is the rabbit's head, right? Very, very popular. Braised rabbit's head with the doubanjiang, with the soy sauce, with the vinegar. You go to the food market, you go to the food store, they're selling all over the place, rabbit's head. But you don't realize there's actually quite a bit of things to eat in the rabbit's head. So when you travel all over Asia, you go to remote area in Brunei, in Borneo Island, rainforest of Malaysia or Vietnam, you see village food. Those foods, they've been cooking for thousands and thousands of years, and they refined it and they cook it like things are cooked in a bamboo. You cook the rice in a bamboo flavor with all kind of pickle and spices. It's amazing.
I'm going to go back to your earlier comment about rabbit heads. It is not something that I've enjoyed. But given the story about the rabbit head and the fact that you clearly like to eat them, in your travels, is there anything that you won't eat?
We're doing a film in Borneo Island, and I was actually staying in the longhouse with the headhunter tribe. These are the people, even as late as the 60s, they actually are headhunters. If you invade the territory, you're dead. And then they put the skull on the ceiling, hanging on the ceiling. When I sleep in this long house and I look up, when I wake up, I look at all these skulls. One of the specialty they do, you know what they do? They braise bat. They actually hunt the bat. They hunt the bat and they cook them. And one thing that I cannot stand is when you look at the plate, when you look at the little the ceramic, the earthenware, and these bat are actually open their eye and all staring at you. I just couldn't touch it. That's the one thing that I can never touch.
Oh, a few moments ago, I was thinking that you were at least going to say you draw the line at cannibalism, given the story about the headhunters. But what it sounds more like to me is that you draw the line at bats. And that I can agree with.
Basically, it's one man's food is another's poison. But in many parts of the world, anything is edible, anything is good, healthy protein, they will eat it. Insects. We are so fortunate to live in this great country with abundance. So we forget, and many, many people around the world are hungry every day going to bed.
Sure, I hear that. And I think part of your goal, part of my goal, is to educate people and make them curious and to want to go to these places to help them gain some more perspective on that. I'm going to turn the corner a little bit here and ask you a much rosier question. Do you have an absolute favorite travel food story?
One time I truly remember, I was in the Cameron Highland of Malaysia, and I visited 2 tea plantations. I visited several farms, some of the big farm and some of the smaller local farms, farmed by people that are really conscious about ecosystem. And I can see there are the big farms, they use insecticide, they use fertilizer, chemical fertilizer. And then I turn around 2 miles away, 3 miles away, down the hill or up the hill, there's smaller farmers, organic farmers. They use all the compost. They use all the new technologies to how to turn the soil and maintain the soil. And I think, and I tried both of these. And the big farm look just like a tomato, beautiful tomato, but they have no taste. They're beautiful, no taste. Now, I don't even talk about probably the residual of chemicals, but the smaller farm, the produce, not as pretty, but absolutely amazing, sweet, the right texture, and not ugly, but it's not appealing. When I come back, I reflect and say, gee, we really have to protect the environment. We are basically destroying Earth, Mother Earth, and have so loaded with chemicals. The water is polluted, is toxic, a lot of residues. And I think we need to, by having the chance to visit all these and taste the produce, that really remind me that we will have to really pay attention to all of these wonderful things that Mother Nature have offered to us that are natural, that are organic, and is healthy.
It makes total sense, and there is an entire industry building around this ugly fruits and vegetables concept. From a taste perspective, the typical answer is the uglier it is, the more delicious it is.
Well, it's about commercial, it's about profit, it's about money. When you have something about the same size and the same look, you can sell for more and also easier than pack. If like a daikon, I go out to the store and I will never buy big, nice looking daikon. I always buy the uglier and the smaller and the different shape. It's nice and sweet. It's not as fibrous and it's crunchy. But commercially speaking, you don't sell. You can't really sell it at a good price, and it's very hard to appeal to the consumer.
Whenever I go into an Asian market, I live around DC, and the markets around here of any good quality are Korean markets. I play a little game where I visit the parsnips and the carrots and the daikon radish, and I try to get the most fingers that are growing out of the single vegetable. And you begin to understand that when you see these carrots that are all gnarly and they have, 4 or 5 points sticking out, they must taste fantastic. This trip that we're talking about, where you saw the bigger farms and the smaller farms, what did you do outside of food? How did you fill the time between meals?
Well, first of all, for the past 30 years, you know that the Yankee Cook Show is not just a food show, it's actually a travel show, just like Anthony Bourdain, Park Chan-wook. We roam around Japan, Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines, all over. A country like Japan and Korea and China have a history of 5,000 years, 3,000 years, a lot of story behind each dish, because food is basically anthropology. Food is history. Food is heritage. Food has a lot to do with how people live, religious belief, and all of these. So when we travel, we basically explore the history, the culture, the backdrop behind each dish. As a cooking teacher, we're also historians. We're also writers. We're also cultural ambassadors. We bring all of these to the rest of the world. So you and I, we are bridges. Food has no national and international boundary. So by introducing people from different parts of the world, the food and the people and the story, people are more connected and they understand. They'll be more inclusive. Then they would not have misunderstanding. So food is the best bridges for all of us.
Absolutely. I'll recount the time that you and I met in person for the first time. It was back in April of 2016. You and I were on a panel given by Asia Society in Chicago, and the theme of that panel was food as an ambassador. And I think that that's what intrigues me the most about your travel stories. My own travel stories and the reason behind this podcast is that food really is, as you say, the best representation of history, culture, society. In fact, I was remarking to a friend the other day, we were talking about what we do when we first get to a new city. And my answer is typically, I go to the grocery store, because the grocery store tells an entire story. There's this fun moment where my wife and I were in Tokyo in 2019, and we spent an entire era, or so it seemed, in the instant ramen aisle. It's just this entire aisle of dry noodles, and it tells a wonderful tale.
Well, I always tell people, particularly when we host a culinary tour with chef or cooking enthusiasts, I always say, wherever you go, keep an open mind. See, as far as food is concerned, you got to keep an open mind. There's no such thing as the best dish, the best food, or the best meal, or the best chef. Beauty is an eye of the beholder. If you are brought up with that, it's always comforting to you. If you're Italian, Italian food is always most comforting to you. If you're from Thailand, the Thai food, the Thai flavor is always the most comforting. Food tells a story. Food tells about the people.
Whenever I show up in a brand new city, other than going to the grocery store, I might be one of those weirdos because when I walk into a restaurant, I try to get a look at what everybody else is already eating so that I might get a suggestion of what I might want. But it informs you, right? The food is a cultural feast that one bears, showing their history, their society, so that when you take a gaze at people's tables, you're actually learning about the people.
We can always see beauty in any people, in any region, any destination. Always believe in exploring new tastes, new ingredients, new techniques, whether it's old and young. Some of the new technique that people are learning from the West, and the chef from the West are learning how to do things and how to use ingredient. Now garlic chili sauce, hoisin sauce, soy sauce is used by chefs all over the world. The most important thing is keep an open mind and always be curious.
Do you remember the last thing you tried to eat that you had never tried before? What's the latest, newest food to Martin Yan?
My twin boys love Mexican food. So, and I start liking a lot of the Hispanic and Mexican flavor profile. They're bold, they're simple, and they are very explosive in flavor and got texture and color. So even though it's very simple, the texture of the beans and the jalapenos and the tomato and the salsa and all of these are fresh and explosive flavor, and it's so fresh and so wonderful. And I started to liking those because typically in Japan or China, they use a lot of prepared bottle seasoning sauce. But in Hispanic cuisine, in the Mexican cuisine, you see a lot of fresh dish, avocado, chili, cilantro, onion, tomato. All of these are very, very wonderful flavor profile. And then I have recently incorporated a lot of these in my dish, in my cooking too.
I noticed these similarities from very different parts of the world with similar flavor profiles that you wouldn't imagine otherwise. I was talking with a friend the other day about this Muslim dish in northwestern China called chow bula. Well, chow bula, as my friend Greg puts it, it's like Chinese fajitas, which is initially surprising. But there's a flavor profile there in the cumin and the chilies and the way the meat and the vegetables are sliced. And you know, he's right. It's also cooked on this very, very hot, flat griddle like fajitas would be. And we remark on things all over the world where I can't believe this is just like this other thing from across the planet. This is why I find it fascinating that you're using Mexican and Latin American flavors as your new go-to set of things, because there's actually a lot of relation between Latin American flavors, Western European flavors, particularly the Iberian Peninsula, and Northwestern Chinese flavors in this bizarre twist of flavor fate. I think a lot of it has to do, as you know, Chef, with Muslim traders who brought all these spices throughout the planet.
Well, you go to the market. You go to the night market in Beijing. Go to the night market in Xi'an. The entire enclave of the Muslim quarter that have the entire street. You'll see all this grilled lamb, wonderful flavor, and the whole street is filled with aroma of these spices. You can go to, just like you go to Turkey, you go to the spice market, you buy all kinds of spices. So the spice tray and the cereal and the spice roll invigorated the economy.
I just finished writing a book about my experience living and cooking in Spain. And, you know, out of the 110 dishes or so, there's a good share of these recipes that are essentially Moorish or North African dishes. And the spice profiles are very similar to things that you would find along the spice route or the old silk route. Walking down the street in Xi'an, in Shanxi province in China, smelling similar smells to walking through a kitchen in Madrid or Barcelona. Now that I've asked you about your favorite travel story, I'd like to know, do you have a worst travel food story?
I mentioned that as I'm a cooking teacher, I'm a world traveler. I always can find beauty, always find good things from every single dish, even though they are not necessarily up to my standard in terms of my taste profile, my criteria. So I haven't really had any meal that really disappoint me.
Okay, Chef, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. I'm not asking about finding the beauty in things. There has to be something you've tried where you said, I understand this is a valuable thing to somebody, but it's not valuable to me. A texture or a taste or a spice or some flavor profile that you just said, you know what? I don't like durian, or, you know, uni is not my thing.
Like many people around the world, if you have never smelled or taste durian, it is a stinky rose. It actually smells like, okay? But this is the king of fruit in Asia. For years, for almost 10 years, I do not want to touch. I don't even want to walk close to a durian. After I start filming in Malaysia and Vietnam and Thailand, and I have to taste it. I went to the farm. First of all, I was overwhelmed and I was almost choked. But I have to film it, so I eat it. And then the first bite is unbearable. The smell and this. And then, but you know, in front of the camera, I got to do it. But after the you get acclimated to it and you can't tell the difference. So the idea is have the courage and the curiosity to try it. Now, you know what? I can eat 2 durian by myself. I don't even have to eat dinner. I just eat durian.
Something I know, Chef, is that after the second bite, the third bite, and you're acclimating to this rather challenging flavor and texture. I understand that. But what do you do about the multiple instances of eating durian? You always have that first bite that is always going to be horrible. Am I wrong?
When I was growing up, I have never heard of uni. Because when I was growing up in China, Japanese food is not very popular. Now Japanese food and ramen noodles and sushi bar are popping all over Asia, all over China. When I first taste uni, first, I don't like the texture. And also to me, it's a little bit too rich. And also the color is really strange to me. Even today, my wife is 3rd generation of Japanese American. She still doesn't like uni. I love uni. Once again, I went to Japan, I start filming. Then I have to eat uni. And I just see painstakingly, they crack it out and they scoop it out. And I said, gee, this is a lot of work. Now I love uni. I actually use uni to stir fry rice. And when I eat rice, I put a tiny bit of uni and I mix it up and I love it. Put a tiny bit of soy sauce, a tiny bit of seaweed.
Okay, we've reached that part of the conversation where I'm going to give you 5 fill-in-the-blank questions. Blank will be my last meal.
The last meal, I would like to have my comfort food. When I was growing up, my mother always cooked this dish. It's a 1-pot meal, the clay pot rice. Then when you cook the rice, it's almost ready. You put a few pieces of marinated chicken, few pieces of shiitake mushroom, and some green onion and ginger, and you finish up cooking. The whole pot of rice, it smells good. And the flavor of the marinated chicken and the juice and the shiitake mushroom permeate into the rice. A couple of bok choy, put it right on top. So it's a complete meal. And to me, that is the most comforting food. And that's the meal that I love when I'm dying for.
Ah, the shagua, the clay pot. That's such a good choice. And you actually killed 2 birds with 1 stone, because another question was going to be, I cook blank to comfort myself. And it sounds like you would do a good clay pot.
I'll do a clay pot. I do that quite often because it's simple. The crust of the rice is so amazing. When you finish the rice, when you put a tiny bit of green tea, tiny bit of oolong tea, right on top, you eat the rice crust. It's unbelievable. Try it.
Oh, that bottom crust. So you only get that if you cook directly over a flame.
Right. You cannot do it in a regular rice cooker. Clay pot and earthenware pot, when you cook rice, it is actually superior.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I cook blank to impress people.
I never cook to impress anybody. It's true. I never really cook anything to really, truly impress people. There's no need for me to try to impress anybody. You can impress. How often you have to impress people? If the people that you have to cook to impress, it's not your true friend.
Ah, and that itself, pretty impressive.
But I must say that no matter what I do, when I have guests, I always do the 100%. Do the best I can, use the freshest ingredient I can find in my fridge, and I cook and hoping people will be impressed. If they're not impressed, there's nothing I can do.
The one food I would erase from the earth is blank.
I would not try or encourage people or recommend people to eat shark's fin. Besides that, there's a cruel to the shark. To me, the shark's fin itself is basically tasteless. You got to use a very super rich broth to cook it. And then you got to cook it with ham and this and that. So the flavor is not actually from the shark's fin.
Right.
It's from everything else. You go for a lot of hassle, a lot of very expensive ingredient, the best ham, the best chicken, all kind of to have a supreme rich broth to cook the shark's fin, which is tasteless. It's just like a little noodle, translucent noodle. So why bother? And also costs a fortune because the whole shark weighs about 500 pounds to 1,000 pounds or 2,000 pounds. And the shark's fin is only about maybe 4 pounds, 5 pounds. You know, you kill an unbelievable creature and you get 2 or 3 pounds of these shark's fin. To me, is senseless.
And yeah, it's pointless. Blank is for dinner tonight.
Tonight, I'm cooking I just get a whole bunch of lotus root. I'll use the lotus root, I cut it up, and I will stuff it. I'll stuff it with fish mousse or shrimp mousse. And I pan fried it, and I put a clear sauce on top, and that is an appetizer. And I'll use the leftover lotus root, I slice it and put in my soup and make a soup with a healthy soup with fungus, with the wood ear and cloud ear and lily and ginkgo nut. And then I will use the other lotus root to stir fry a vegetarian dish. So I use one simple ingredient to make a complete menu.
And Chef, I realize that you and I actually share someone in common over in China. Actually, now he's passed away, but Li Shanlin from the Li family cuisine, the imperial cuisine restaurant in Beijing. He made a dish similar to that, the lotus root appetizer you're referring to, with the shrimp mousse on the inside. It's absolutely delicious. And if you're out there listening and you have not tried properly made lotus root, it's one of the most unique textured vegetables. Very entertaining to look at. Looks just like a magnified sponge. Chef, I want to thank you for your time. You and I have shared a number of conversations over the years, but this is a bit more enlightening than the shorter conversations we've been able to enjoy.
Yeah, good luck. Keep in touch. Anything else we can do, let us know. And maybe we can do, if this response is good, we can do one Zoom cooking event.
I love it.
We'll keep in touch.
Bye, Chef. To all of you wonderful, intelligent listeners out there, remember to subscribe to this show, follow me on Instagram, and find our books with your favorite seller. Those are One Pan to Rule Them All, Kiss My Casserole, How to Cook Anything in Your Dutch Oven, Chinese Street Food, and the forthcoming Off the Top of My Head, Recipes, Rants, and Ravings of an American Cook Obsessing in Barcelona. Until next time, stay saucy and eat well.